We must marry ourselves to the development of young people. And that's more than just academics. It's more than just sports. It is a soul work. You want to give kids options when they're young. It helps them to build autonomy and decision making. You don't want to always tell them everything to do. You want to see what thing they're gravitating the most to. We believe that you can align young people in such a fashion with their strengths and innate talents and gifts that you can begin to call those things out of them in a powerful way.
You are listening to the Akkeri podcast, a show about men and masculinities, the challenges that modern men face, and how to chart a better way forward. I'm your host, Matt Howlett, mental health coach and founder of the Akkeri. This episode is a conversation that I had with Dr. Dermell Brunson, a dedicated leader in youth development, mental health advocacy, and the arts. As the founder of Leaders of Tomorrow Youth Center, he has spent years empowering young people through education, creativity, and leadership training. Dermell and I talk about the importance of mentoring and how to connect with, build relationships, and support younger people. We also talk about how exposure to the arts can help adolescents and young adults learn about themselves, express themselves, and grow into their full potential. If you enjoy this conversation, do us a favor and share it with a friend or write a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Here's my conversation with Dr. Dermell Brunson. Hey, Dermell.
Hey.
You can hear me.
I can hear you.
Dude, that's wild.
Oh my goodness. So it must have been what you said. The app must have been the issue.
I'm here trying to make it as simple as possible. Just send people the link and it ain't working out.
You did the right thing. That's normally what would work for a guy like me. It's just to go right to the browser in the Safari and it pops up. So
yeah.
Either way, how's your day going?
Man,
so
interesting. Yeah. I sent you an email saying I need a few minutes because I had a cat emergency. We have a cat, my wife and I. And this white cat has been hanging around the house past 2 nights. And my wife is a little bit concerned about it. We tried to get it into the house last night and get animal control to handle it because the cat doesn't have a collar. But it wouldn't come in and stay last night. So we wondered maybe it just lives in the community. It'll go home. But it ended up sleeping on our back deck last night. So anyways, about half an hour before we were supposed to jump on here, the cat came by again, so Dana called animal control, and then animal control showed up, and I'm just like, baby, I got to go jump on this call, right? And so I got one cat in the kitchen. Our cat is blocked off in another room because I can't trust the new cat with our cat.
Right.
So I'm downstairs trying to babysit 2 cats, right?
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And definitely, look, you can't trust the stray cat with your new cat until you get clarity on what's going on there.
Yeah, exactly. The cat could have any type of, disease or something and pass on ours. And how you doing? How's your day going?
Good. Going all points moving forward, Okay. Sorry for that fumbly bumbly on this, getting on this call, man.
Don't worry about it, man. I'm easy going. I'd love it if you could just give us a bit of background on who you are, what LTYC is, how that came to be. I love what you guys are doing down there, but, tell everybody else what it's all about.
Well, Matt, LTYC, Leaders of Tomorrow Youth Center. We're a 501c3 arts education nonprofit serving young people through Baltimore, Maryland, DC, and Virginia. We provide performing and creative arts programming and resources for young people who otherwise might not have access to those performing and creative arts. We're talking music, theater, dance, visual arts, creative writing, fashion and cosmetology, culinary arts, media arts. We believe the arts are essential to academic success building with young people, but also, man, social interpersonal skill building.
Oh, absolutely.
Communication skills, learning to work with a team, learning to be self-motivated, but also collective and group motivated, able, to play in a sandbox nicely with others, right? And so it's that kind of a thing that we're pushing forward, man, with love and grace and all the wonderful things that we believe young people need today.
That's very cool, man. I love that. I did a couple of years work in group homes here, and a lot of that is obviously trying to teach a lot of what you just talked about, the same stuff.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about you.
Yeah. So I grew up in West Baltimore, young, started with the arts as a youth. My first real job. Check every 2 weeks. Was an on-staff musician at a popular church in Baltimore for 7 years, from my preteen years through high school. I played the drums and percussions and helped with the choirs and that kind of thing. And so started out music, managed to and support a couple of local acts, young. And I went to the Baltimore School for the Arts, one of the top, 5 high school conservatory model schools of its kind in the country. And so went there, studied theater and, other arts as a part of our theater arts background and program. And I started working in the church community and group homes, as you mentioned. I worked in group homes and in foster care. Yep. My mom was a social worker for years, and really she and her network of friends and a couple of friends that my dad had really opened my eyes to the need of love and support through that world of foster care. And so I worked in foster care agencies and group homes here in Baltimore and in Maryland, the surrounding area. And during that time, I was still young at that time, working in, juvenile services. And when I would do my site visits for the young people, I just noticed that they didn't have the arts as robustly as I thought they should. Right. They might have 1 or 2 classes, but they didn't have the options of all the performing and creative arts. And so, my life was really designed, and I believed it was geared towards helping to afford young people and others what I believed I was blessed with and able to be afforded, which was people believing in the power of the arts, but believing in me as a young man, giving me opportunity. And so that's been my life, man, working in music, working in the arts, continuing to build LTYC, and give opportunities, which are tough, where arts education is normally the first thing to get cut in most programs in America for young people, which is unfortunate. And then as a nonprofit, also, fighting that good fight of faith to keep us going, in the right direction there. So my life has really been, my background has been in those things, working in the church world and in the community world and in the foster care group home world, and kind of merging and mashing up all those things from a heart posture to what we do with Leaders of Tomorrow.
Very cool. We have a lot in common.
Wow.
I knew we had a couple things, but I just learned a few more. Like, I used to be a pastor.
Wow.
On the music side, worked with students as well and young adults. A couple years in group homes. So I did that first, and was working at a church plant at the same time, and then went to like a paid position at a more established church for a few years. But yeah, I studied theology and music here in Canada, in Alberta, and played drums. Was my first instrument.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy, hey?
Wow.
And I didn't quite get into the same thing as you, but I see a lot of similarities there. You know what I mean? Because
that's multiple similarities. That's actually eerie. That's multiple similarities there.
Yeah, man. And I mean, really, what I'm doing now, it's the same type of vision in a way. You know what I mean? You are mentoring, I'm mentoring. I'm working with other men. I want to see them have the skills, abilities, support that I didn't exactly have. And you're trying to do the same thing from young men, young women when it comes to the arts.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Just quickly, could you give me an example of like what comes to mind? What's the memory that sticks out to you of the first time that you really saw a kid get it? Does that make sense to you? Like when they really I'm loving this. This is so aligned with who I am. Thank you to you and the rest of your team for doing what you're doing, right?
Yeah. It's so many of those stories because you see it in a twinkle of the kid's eye.
Yeah.
Right. It's an intangible thing, and that as a working in the background that you have as well. It's so intangible, man, and that's where the magic, as I like to call it, that's the magic right there. Is some things you can quantify and document and create data and have those benchmark moments, but what we've experienced working in the community is you see in a dance class that kid where everyone else is doing okay and trying and good, but you see that other kid that has the innate thing going on in there. There's some spiritual current connecting them to this dance class or to this music class, right? The way they respond. And so that's what we're after. We're always chasing that, proverbial high, right? Is we don't have the ability to decide if a young person is going to be good at something or really go all the way in and learn the skills, or if they have an innate ability. But what we do train ourselves to pay attention to is the twinkle in their eye, the response to that visual art instruction, the paying attention. So that's what this is all about. It's just exposure, experience, engagement, right? Enrichment, all the good E's words, right? Can we get young people exposed? Because once they're exposed to something that they may not have had exposure to previously, that'll awaken, the art thing inside of them.
Yeah. I love that, man. And that is exactly what it is. It's intangible. It's body language, right? You see it in their eyes. You see it, you hear it in the voice. You just body movement in general. As you're talking, my mind is going back mainly to the years that I worked in the group homes. It was about 3 years. And I think, actually, you know what? I probably shouldn't make an assumption because I don't know exactly what was going through the guys' minds, mostly young men that we work with. We had a couple girls at this one house, but mostly young men. And whenever I was trying to get some sense of camaraderie, talk about something that they might be interested in, that I, had some experience with, there was always like a hesitancy, right? So I know you must have that yourself because you're trying to teach all like very specific skills where I'm just trying to have a conversation and get through those barriers, right? Like breaking the ice type of thing, right?
Yeah.
What has that experience been like for you? Because I'm thinking first you must have some people that are drawn to it naturally because, they like A, B, or C, and then they maybe already have some experience with it or have seen it and interested. But then second, you definitely got some people that, well, maybe I'm assuming, but are there and don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there are programs. We encourage our partners and providers that we work with to give young people choice. So it's, here's music, theater, dance, creative writing, vision. Which one are you interested in? What's your first favorite? What's your second favorite?
Right.
The typical youthful kid optional thing that we really believe in. You want to give kids options when they're young. Helps them to build autonomy and decision making. You don't want to always tell them everything to do. You want to see what thing they're gravitating the most to, because we all have our thing that's built in our molecular structure, in our DNA, but also in the learned behavior from environment. So we don't know what may already be inside of a young person. And so we believe in giving them options. So yes, when you have options, the buy-in is different. When you have programs in certain schools where they're quote unquote forcing a group of kids, hey, today is culinary arts. You're gonna do this class. You're gonna always have a numbers game. If you have, let's say you have 10 young people, you probably can bet your bottom dollar at least 3 out of that 10 won't care at all about that culinary class because you just pushed them into that one group and told them to do it. So you're going to get that pushback. We believe in a strengths-based model, and we believe in a relationship building-based approach and model. And so we believe that all things can be accomplished through agreement, right? And through relationship building, we can all accomplish things, and even with young people. So the first thing that we're training and teaching our instructors and have taught our team members over the years is build relationship. Build relationship. You see that resistance happen and go with the resistance, right? Don't add resistance on top of resistance. Just go with the resistance that young person who might not want to participate in music that day because they're not interested.
Right.
They're not interested in that. They're interested in a different modality of their expressive, self. Let's find what that is, but still get buy-in through relationship building. Where's the commonality? Where can you find a joining spot, a place to join and agree with them? Because agreement is the seedbed for change.
Yeah. I was watching a couple of videos. I believe it was mainly on your Instagram just before we talked a couple days ago. Saw one of, I could hear one of your leaders. They probably were the person that was holding the phone. and there was I think it was a young man making some eggs, and he had a couple of other students around. I'm like, I love that because I love to cook. And it's one of the things that I'm very glad that my mother kind of forced me into, right? Because I grew up primarily with a single mother, and I have 3 siblings, so there's 4 of us that she was caring for. My grandmother pitched in a lot, but mom would often call me from work, and she'd be like, "Hey, Matthew, can you take this out of the fridge? I need you to do this, this, and this with it. Turn the oven on at this temperature." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm doing all this like sous chef type work. And not realizing that later on in life, this is going to pay dividends. Because at first, I mean, at least I could feed myself quite easily when I was in college. But as the years went on, I realized, I really like this, and I can express myself in this, and I can enjoy this, and I can do it for other people and serve other people. And like it's amazing. I'm very lucky that way because it was something that I enjoyed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I love how you said it. Your mom was training you as a sous chef, prep cook. All of the things, early because, I've had that call from my mom too. Dermell, take the ground turkey out the freezer, put it in the sink so it can thaw out by time,
exactly.
It needs to, this is the smallest thing you don't realize, it needs to thaw out. I never thought about that because all I've been doing is just eating it when you cook it.
Exactly.
I don't realize that it has to thaw out for a while. Okay. And so I love that you use that example. That's exactly it. And like you said, you were forced. Sounds like you're a parental sibling. And so you had that, as we call in the clinical world, you're a sibling that has leadership responsibilities with your other siblings. Right?
Yeah, to an extent, yeah.
Yeah. And so that creates a dynamic of light force because, you're being asked by mom or grandmom or dad, whomever, to do something that you don't realize you're learning while you're being asked to walk your sister to the park, walk your brother to the park. Those small things builds the confidence. And that's what we're trying to do, Matt, with the arts is the arts changes kids' lives. It gives them an outlet, as a musician, what that outlet can be, positive, healthy social coping skills, healthy social outlets so that we can deter young people from choosing, destructive pathways early in life where, they could have been expressing themselves in a fruitful, productive way. That's what we're doing. And so that strength-based approach, calling out something that's good with a young person, we want to accuse young people of doing well.
Right? I like that.
We accuse young people of doing so much, especially in today's world, the different generations and, technology taking kids away from social and interpersonal skill building. We believe that you can align young people in such a fashion with their strengths and innate talents and gifts that you can begin to call those things out of them in a powerful way that allows for their hearing to be rehearsed.
Yeah.
Hey, someone, whether it's my parent, a sibling, a teacher, a youth pastor, or whomever, my coach, the lady next door, calling out, saying something good to me over and over again will begin to massage it and rehearse it in my memory, and it'll build those skills up in a most precious way. And so that's what we're really pushing that message forward.
Can you give me an example? Does anything come to mind? Any specific situations? I mean, obviously without dropping names or anything, but yeah. I can think back just to the 3 years that I spent in group homework. And even in the years after that, because I ran into a couple kids at just randomly in the community, and you hear good stories, right? And you're like, oh, that's really nice to hear. Do you have anything like that comes to mind?
I think of a young man and his brother that I work with, directly in my years building LTYC early. They were in foster care. I was full-time at a foster care agency. Shout out to Win Family Services. And brother Al Laws, who was a mentor and CEO and boss when I was working there. He's still a boss, but more semi-retired now. But he gave me an opportunity in the leadership there to work with young people. I was still a young man myself, late teens, early 20s, working with young people. So I could connect differently with the kids because I was literally between 5 and 10 years, they're a senior. I wasn't that far away from them age-wise. And there was two boys, and the boy, one of the boys was deaf, And the brother, who was the younger of the two, was actually, again, the parental sibling, the caregiver, because his older brother, which was a few years older, was deaf. And so this kid, both of them were bright and had a lot of personality and good energy and spunk. And I just remember when we would engage with the caregiving brother around his strengths, a lot of stress on him. Of course, he has an older brother that's hearing impaired and they're in foster care, and then you know having people around to love them, but they have that struggle with the life of young people in foster care at times. What really stuck out to me about this particular young man, and if I could share the story, which is he was very charismatic, was great in the fashion show arts presentations, but he showed up big time as a leader when it was time for us to pray. It was a faith-based organization.
Okay.
And so when it was time for it to pray, he was the guy who raised his hand and offered and volunteered to pray. And it started another apparent gifting in him, right? He had good orator skills. He was an orator naturally as a young man. He could advocate for himself using words and communicate in a way that was charming and charismatic, but also direct. And just that experience, but he was at times a little bit of a troublemaker, right?
Yeah.
You know, had that mischievous streak in him. But when we identified him as, we ended up naming him as the chaplain of that group. Still a troublemaker, but he would be the chaplain to open us and close us in prayer.
Sure.
And it really washed over in me a renewed sense of how much strength-based approach matters, Matt. That we could have spent so much time focusing on the unwanted behavior, focusing on the challenges, focusing on the needs and dynamics.
Yeah.
But instead, when you beam in on that one beam of light that you see happening with a young person, that's sparking the feel good, because we all need that. That's a part of life. We all need, you know, love and the touch and the experience and people and laughter and community. It's a part of life.
Yeah.
And so we sometimes omit to cultivate that in young people, especially in the inner cities of America, where there's so many other, again, things to accuse them of and call out that of a negative hue and energy. We believe that calling out those powerful things that may be very tangible, or even, again, as you and I said earlier, the intangible. And so that's really what sticks out to me right now.
Yeah. I'd love for you to speak to like the parents, guardians, older siblings that are going to be listening, because as I'm listening to you, that's what I'm hearing. You know what I mean? Because I'm hearing that type of, you know, the audience that you're speaking to, but I'm also thinking of myself in those roles and the challenge that it is to get through that barrier of helping that young person figure themselves out. You know what I mean? And not necessarily pushing them towards one thing or another. You know, as a musician and the other things that I've experienced with, I would generally try and do that if I see someone like, you know, I think of my nephew who's a teenager, you know, I think he's 16 or 17, finishing up high school. He was getting into weightlifting there for a while, right? So I went to the gym with him, right? I'm trying to connect with him on that level. But I often find throughout all the different types of experience that I've had with students, it really takes a minute to get through to them, to let them know that you're genuine, let them know that you actually care, you know, build that relationship like you said. Can you speak to the person that's in that position? Like, what encouragement, what direction even do you give to your leaders to try and build that relationship and say, you know what, hey, whatever it is you're interested in, you know, I want to help you find that. I want to support you in that. I want to help you grow in that area.
Being good listeners, right? Sometimes as adults, you know, and I struggle with it even still now with folks that are younger, whether it's young people or younger folks on my staff and team, is you want to give them so much when you see goodies inside, right? You see the potential, you see it. So there's an innate thing, and you might align with that as well, coming from the ministry world, is you want to teach, right? And so we forget that even if we use that model of Jesus, we know about all of the teaching, the preachings, the beatitudes, and all of the sayings, but a lot of what was happening was them watching him. Right?
Sure.
It was it was example. And so that's my word is, don't feel the need to do all the talking before you make an assessment of how things should move forward.
Yeah.
If we're accusing young people of doing well and accusing them to be the best versions of themselves, there's a time and season where we must hear from them and then reframe and reshape what's coming out of them in a way that we know could be most beneficial. And so for parents and older siblings and caregivers and coaches and mentors and, all of those types of folks, I would say we're beelining in on the authenticity of relationship building again. Can we be authentic with young people and not always feel the need to tell them what the hell to do?
Yeah.
Can we show them? Can our lives be the example? Can how we handle situations be the example? Can we make ourselves available for conversation and dialogue? So if they're interested or yearning that teachable, word talky type of energy, that's cool. But also, can we just put them in the mix, right? By showing them through example. And that also really breeds back to authenticity. As my dad used to say when we were young, hey, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You got 2 ears. So you should be listening more, talking less. That will always benefit you in most situations if you are married to that. And I think as caregivers, leaders, parents, big brothers, big sisters, sometimes the love is so passionate and powerful in us that we want to protect and save people coming behind us in a chronological form. We want to save them from what we think they may be going down a different road or turn, or we think we know best because this happened with us or happened to us, and now we can share it with you. And that doesn't always apply, Matt, to every situation. Yes, as human beings worldwide, the core of us, again, we all need, some basic things to live, food and water, and right. But we also need love and affirmation, all those other things, right? Tangible versus intangible there again. But man, if we could just relax ourselves around the fact that you don't know everything that's happening within inside of a person's mind or heart when you're dealing with them. And so if we're listening more and we're being more authentic, I think good things happen from that.
Yeah. To me, that sounds like it comes a lot down to mindfulness and maturity. You know what I mean? The ability to hold back, to know that you probably do have some wisdom from your experience that you could, offer, but you really got to be able to just listen, and you might not understand it. You know what I mean? You might have to ask a clarifying question or two. You know what I mean? But it also reminds me of a conversation I just recently had with a psychologist friend of mine. We were talking about mainly the book that he just released, but one of the subcategories in the book is about men finding maturity through words, like the ability to express themselves in words, especially emotion words. So talking about how you feel, what it is that you feel about a certain thing, and what you like and what you don't like, right? What you want to do and what you don't do. Helping young people figure that out is so crucial. And I think it's difficult for us to listen sometimes because they don't use a lot of words, especially men. Does that resonate with you? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does resonate. And, there's sometimes there's a colloquial and a society driven energy also that promotes this, right? It might be something that's happening naturally for some men or most men. But there's another thing that's happening where we've gotten comfortable allowing that, right? Our movies, our music, our literature, our television shows, our culture has made it okay for men to just grunt, not say, just not doing it. And it's the manly thing, right?
Yeah.
I was blessed because though I was, as a young boy, a boy's boy, I wanted to, go play sports. I wrestled and, with friends and played basketball and did the boy thing, scarred up my legs and fought and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But because of the arts being in my experience, especially once we got to theater, I started music young, but once I was trained in theater, in a formal training. I had informal training musically and innate gifting there, but formally in theater arts, Matt, that's where I was able to get some more instruction and opportunity on the verbal expression. And I'm still working on it.
Oh yeah.
I'm still working on it. I'm
That's
still
lifelong.
figuring out. Yeah, it's like still sometimes I'm like, oh shit, I could have expressed that differently. I didn't realize that that's what I was feeling, right? I didn't realize that that's what I was thinking, I didn't realize that until I sat down and reflected and said, wait a minute, I could have used more words here, and also the other piece is back to the example and actual putting things in motion. As a leader, I've also recognized that we can use the correct words so that we're not using so many words. It's less words, but it's just the correct words, right? Can we simplify?
Yeah, I feel that.
That's something I'm also in motion on working on, daily is, can I say it in a more simple way?
Yeah.
But still hit the vulnerable parts of that, right? Without feeling the need for it to be a monologue.
Yeah.
Right. Not feeling the need for it to be some long drawn out thing. Can I cut to the chase, but still leave the deposit or come out of the situation where I found agreement with someone, So that's the like you said, that's the lifelong journey. That's the lifelong journey, brother Matt.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't stop. And the more that you get into relationship, like you can't have intimacy in relationship without that. You know what I mean? Like, and when I say intimacy, for some reason, I know how I feel once I spit the word out. And so I'm going to assume that other men and just people listening are going to feel the same way too. Intimacy isn't just about romantic relationships. We seem to take that word and make it only mean that, but it simply means like deep connection. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Right. And I think at least I was when I was younger, but I know a lot of men in general, we find that to be a little scary or a little maybe feminine, and we shy away from that. But I want to get good at that, right? I mean, with my wife, for sure, that's what comes to mind right off the bat, because she's generally better than me at explaining, putting things into words, not necessarily around what she feels, but definitely about what she thinks. I'm better at feeling, but I think a lot of men struggle with that. Tell me, or talk to me for a minute about how you find the arts and the different skill sets that you teach, because I'm really interested in that. Do you find that, say, culinary skills help people more so than music skills when it comes to expressing themselves? Is there basically straight across the board, they're the same based off of what the person's like, what they're drawn to and not?
Great question. And I think that the swift answer there would be, it depends, like you said, on the person and what their art area is. The hip check would tell me that the things that are where you're writing words or writing music or learning character work, dancing, getting that physicality out.
Yeah.
That helps too. If you're expressing both emotionally and physically, because we know what exercise and moving and breaking a sweat and all of that can do for us as human beings, right? We learned that some decades ago, that's important, right? You got to break a sweat every now, So I would probably, the health side of my brain would probably say that those things are creating endorphins and things in your body that's different.
Yep.
But I also, just hearing you even mention earlier, about cooking, I've heard people who are damn near mutes. They barely talk. But when they're creating and they have their thing going in the kitchen and they're creating new things, that is therapeutic.
Yeah.
It's relaxing for them. It's blissful. And they doing that is important, right?
Yeah.
So I think it depends. For me, it's music, but it's also a gifting of being able to identify the gift in others. I believe that God has gifted me with a gift of identifying others' gifts. That's probably one of my, if not my dominant thing.
Yeah.
As a visionary, is I can see beyond what I see. So I can go, yeah, you're good at that, right? Why don't you do that more? That's right. That gives me a sensation of expressive balance, which back to your question, because I feel like I'm exchanging with that individual. I also feel like I'm fulfilling a purpose on earth, but
Yeah.
it also gives me the sensation that painting a portrait may give a painter, right? That I feel fulfilled if I'm in a room full of, especially young people, but any age, and I'm able to, through exchange, identify something in them that they may have had low confidence or esteem about.
Yeah.
That and resonates. That's a gift for me, right? And my personal time is going to be music.
Right.
But, so I think it varies for each person. I've known folks that are awesome writers, writing so many great things and poems and books. You say, hey, can you get up and read this poem? Oh, no, I can't read it in front of people. It's like, you can't. This is a great poem. Why don't you read this short story? Why don't you read this? You wrote this great thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I love writing it. Everything came out of me. I feel good about it. Well, why don't you share it with the class? No, 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 no. I can't get up in front of people and talking, right? And so you learn that, it balances out for each person.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important also to point out what you just said, that it's therapeutic and why it's therapeutic. Like, it's therapeutic because it's so deeply aligned with who we are. You know what I mean? Like when I am making something, and generally it's on the music side, I like to work with my hands. I don't own a lot of tools. I've never been like overly handy, but this is the second house now I've owned, and I do like to just make things. You know what I mean? Once I can get lost in that type of task. You know what I mean? And I think anytime that we notice something where we forget how hungry we are, we forget how tired we are, we forget about time, we get lost in the task, wrapped up in it, right? That's probably something that we love, and we got to be able to listen to that. And it's therapeutic, when we do these things, because they are so aligned with who we are. They help us to express ourselves. They help us to get ourselves out into the world. Right?
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
It's the therapeutic. I love how you said, help us get ourselves out into the world. That's great. That's a great quote. That's a great Matt
That's
quote.
Quotable?
Yeah, that's
a
quotable.
good Matt quote.
Yeah, that's quotable right there, baby, because that's the deal. Because again, it's so easy to be living our own bubble, living our own isolation. Like you said, you go through your daily routine and how things flow for your life. And again, like you said, you can forget to eat, forget to do these other things, but how can you get yourself out into the world and be of service to the world? And so that's the piece is, can we get young people to be more self-reflective, right? More self-expressive, right? More self-aware,
Yeah.
right? So that now when it's time for you to be of age in the adult world, you are a healthy, balanced, fully aware, not perfect, because none of us will be perfect walking this planet, but will you have a healthy, balanced, effective, fruitful adult life, right? Where you're, again, as Matt would say, you're now out into the world, right?
Yeah, putting yourself out there, expressing yourself. And a lot of that is coming from, again, I'll remember the psychologist I mentioned just a few minutes ago. Ron Johnson is his name. His book, you might actually appreciate this. He wrote a book called Balls, Men Finding Courage with Words, Work, Wine, and Women. And we just had a conversation just a couple of days ago about the importance of men finding their profession versus finding a job. And that's what the difference is there. It's the profession is professing yourself, putting something of you out into the world, doing, making the world a better place through something that is so deeply aligned with who you are. Right. And, Ron says, that could be swinging a hammer, that could be writing a book. Doesn't matter necessarily what it is, right? Could be, culinary arts, could be theater, could be playing the drums, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be other people align with other things, real estate developers and things that I've talked to business people. I sat into a meeting with one of my attorneys a few years ago for a separate project outside of LTYC. And she had a quote on her wall behind her desk that said, basically, in summing it up, business is an art form. right? And so it opened my mind and talking to more folks on the business side, even legal and CPAs, and again, real estate developers and decision makers that you don't normally consider their work to be mission focused or people focused or passion focused. You might see it as just they're after the money, right?
Sure.
And it's like, hey, not everyone. Some people have an alignment with what they're doing that goes back to childhood, that goes back to a book they were given by a mentor,
Absolutely.
that goes back to, right? And then it opens them up in a way that creates that connectivity. And they see, hey, I'm building these buildings, and because that is my way of imparting into the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah.
What's on the horizon for you and for the center? What are you guys working on right now? Big projects coming up?
Yeah. So we're currently continuing our regional on-site expansion throughout Maryland, DC, and Virginia. More schools, more partners, more programs, and our national and international push with our LTYC Learn virtual arts platform. And so right now we're currently talking to potential investors in that platform to ensure that, you know, there's equitable arts access to young people that may be being homeschooled or doing school online.
Yeah.
And so that's important to us. And a couple of other media creative projects, youth TV show we're developing.
Very cool.
Yeah, just, you know, inspired by Mr. Rogers and inspired by Jim Henson and inspired by that world of creators. We've kind of charted a path to have a show accessible to middle school students. And so we're developing that. And then, of course, meeting new partners and friends. We're a nonprofit organization. So we're in a season right now of fighting bureaucratic, challenges coming through the federal government.
Sure.
In America, and also just the lack of hyper attentiveness towards the arts and young people and the efficacy of the arts in young people's lives. And so the big projects right now always connect to raising money, raising funds, and getting those donors and supporters who may care about young people or care about the arts and want to donate, tax deductible donation to our organization to help us keep things going.
Yeah.
Keep field trips going. Right now we're in sharing season from March 1st through June 1st, where we intensify and increase master classes for the arts, field trips, and performances for our young people in the programs. And so we're really excited about that currently right now, as well as we're in the first month of sharing season.
Very cool. Very cool. Where can people find you online?
LTYC.net, Leaders of Tomorrow Youth Center. We go by LTYC. That's LTYC.net. On social media platforms, we're at LTYC Arts, ARTS, LTYC Arts on all social media platforms. The online learning platform I mentioned earlier is LTYClearn.net, LTYClearn.net. And supporters can also give love and ongoing support through our shop, where you purchase, hats, hoodies, T-shirts, and water bottles, and cool doodads with affirmations and art sayings and cool things on that we've created internally, as well as along with some young people. And that's at LTYCshop.net. All monetary portions and proceeds go to benefit our development fund, where we can get art supplies, paint brushes, dance items, materials for performances, as well as paying for school buses and admission to other trip opportunities. Just last month, the world's most successful musical was in town in Baltimore, The Lion King, at the Hippodrome Theater in Baltimore. And we took a group of students from the Booker T. Washington Middle School for the Arts in inner city Baltimore to see that show. And so things like that, we always need cool folks out there to support. Very
cool. Yeah. Before I let you go, Dermell, I want to hear the elevator pitch, and I think it needs to get out there. What is it that you see as the biggest reason why people should donate, should give, should support this type of work in general? Not even just LTYC, because obviously, I'm Canadian. I honestly don't know if I've got listeners in Maryland. Hopefully I'm helping you out either way. But give me that pitch, man. What is it that you say to people in a couple sentences that is the reason for this work and is the reason why people should see the benefit of the arts in young people.
That beacon of light we talked about earlier, you know, that's it. You see it in a young person's eye, you feel it in their heart. We must marry ourselves to the development of young people as well-rounded, holistic, wholehearted young people that will be successful adults. And that's more than just academics. It's more than just, you know, sports. It is a soul work. The soul work comes through the arts, music, theater, dance, creativity, that creative power that exists in all of us. We must teach young people to tap into it when they're being developed, because it changes their lives in multiple ways. Even if they don't choose art as a form of, again, as you mentioned earlier, profession or career or job.
Yeah.
It could be an at-home hobby. It could be, again, a self-healthy outlet of expression. And we will change the world and make the world a better place by ensuring that every young person has equitable and full access to the arts.
Love that. Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I feel that because I know from my experience what it has done just for me. I'll speak just for myself, but I am so thankful that you know, I'm not in the church world anymore, but I'm so thankful that I had those opportunities growing up. And I think it's a stretch to call it theater, but we had church plays, and I was in them.
Yes. Yes.
But just it's like exposure. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because in a very small way, you know, I had a part to play, I had lines to memorize, and, you know, outfit to put on. And it's figuring yourself out, figuring out what it is that you like, you don't like, expressing yourself and learning about yourself. That's a crucial task that we all have, whether you have kids or not. Yeah.
Crucial. I love what you said, man. That's great. It's great stuff.
I love it, man. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
I really
Thank
enjoyed
you
meeting you and having a conversation with you. I hope you guys are able to expand exactly as you have planned. And
Thank you.
We're checking in on you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we'll love to keep having additional conversations as the months go by. If you ever have any time to talk about new things, thanks for having us on. We really appreciate it.
All right, man. It was good to meet you, Dermell. Thanks for your time.
Likewise. All right.
Bye.
Peace.
Thank you for listening. I hope you found some value in this episode. If you have, be sure to share the Akkeri podcast with a friend and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can find the Akkeri on socials at the Akkeri and on the web at theakkeri.com.